Hello, everyone. So we were waiting for everyone to connect, so I hope everyone is in. If not, they will connect later. I would like to welcome you to this 2N on Air. This one is aimed at integration between 2N OS devices. My name is Lucas. I'm the product specialist. I would just like to warn you that this meeting is recorded. So if you don't agree, please disconnect. Let me just give you a quick overview of the agenda for today. What we will learn is how to connect to our devices, how to make calls between them, how to set them up so that they work properly, they do as you want. Also, we will go through some advanced settings, how to create users, time profiles, switch settings, and also how to set up those devices as well. I would just like to show you which devices we are talking about today. I've got our two flagships. So as you can see, I've got here two devices. The one on the left is called 2N Indoor View. It's our answering unit. And the one on the right is called 2N IP Style. So these are the two devices that I'm going to use today. Most of the settings are same throughout all of our platform. This platform contains many devices, mostly intercoms, answering units, as well as access units, but also others. Let me begin with the first thing that you will need to do, and that is obviously connecting the device to the network. Let's assume you've already done that, and now you need to find the device on the network. So let me just share my screen. All right, so locating our devices on the network is quite easy. All you need to do is get our 2N network scanner. It's a small app for Windows as well as Apple. Just switch it to English, sorry. That you can download from here. You can find it in products, software applications, and then you will find the network scanner. Once you install it, it's got a very simple interface in which you can see devices like this. If I would have more devices, then I would see them as well. In here, I've only got these two devices available, so I see that my indoor view is on this IP address, my IP style is on this IP address. If you would see, for example, 4 zeros here, that means that your device didn't get any IP address, and you can change it. The IP address can be changed in many ways, but the easiest one is through here. You just tap config, you switch off DHCP, you type in your IP address, netmask, gateway, and the password. The default password, if it's a new unit, will be 2N. If it's a unit that was already used, then it will be the password that you have previously entered. So let me show you if I connect to one of the units. So let's double tap here. It will open the interface. Sometimes you might get a certificate warning, so just ignore it. This is not a new unit already, it's been configured, so I will enter my password, but if it were the default one, then it will be 2N. Here I've got a different one. So this is what the dashboard of the unit looks like. I will also open the other one, the IP style. So as you can see, the IP addresses match what I saw in the network scanner, and the serial numbers you can find here. So if you will not be able to find the device, then always you can use a filter from here, which will give you the correct device. You can type in anything that will match any of these devices. So if you are looking for view, just type in view and it will find view. If you want style, well, the style, if you know the serial number of the device, just enter the serial number and so on. Another option from here is to also browse directly to the units as I did here. So let me begin with the most basic settings of those units. So in the beginning, I mentioned this is the dashboard, which is color-coded. It's split into 5 sections. The first one, the green one, is called status. It gives you an overview of the device's status, some event logs, access logs, license information, services that are currently being turned on. And also there's a locate button. If you would have, for example, more devices on the desk that will be of the same type, you can just hit locate and the device will flash, as you can see on the camera. If you go to this blue section is called directory. It's got the information about your users. These users can have multiple access credentials. They can have emails. They can have their photos. You can also see where they're located in the structure of the display. This is only valid for display devices. If you would have a device that doesn't have a display, then you will not have the photo. You will not have this section. So all of this is dynamic. Here you can also add the numbers to call devices or users, depending on which device you're in. So in here, from the IP style, I will most of the time call users, but for example, in the indoor view, you can see that I've got devices here. I will show you how to add them later. The user can have up to 3 numbers. These numbers can also be controlled via time profiles. You've got up to 20 of them, as well as individual ones that can be set up from here. The time profiles, let me just skip here, can be configured from here. So you've got those 20, you can name them, you can select when the time profile will be active, meaning if the time profile is, for example, active from, let's say, 3 to 5 or whatever, then anything outside of this time profile will make the specific item that you have used inactive. So let me just turn this off. Sorry, delete it, save it. Then continuing with the numbers, you can also see here to an API address. To an API is another application from us that you can also obtain from the software applications on our website, tuan.com. It's a small app that gives you a camera overview on your computer or laptop, but it doesn't give you the option to make calls, so it's video only. Another thing here in users is that you've got group calls, so you can link the 2 numbers together. So if I wanted to call multiple devices or numbers at the same time, for example, the person might have their indoor view that is at home, and they might also have a mobile phone that they want to reach. And obviously, they would want to reach both of them at the same time. You can group them here. The same is then available for all the other numbers. And then at the end, you've got also a so-called user deputy. This user deputy is for example, concierge or reception. So if there would be someone that they would need to reach, in case of unavailability, you would use the user deputy, which is, again, another user with different set of numbers. Then here in the access settings, you've got entry rules and exit rules that you can, again, control via time profiles. I will later on show you how to control these. And then you've got also a validity term, which means from when the access will be enabled until when. So we've got a calendar here where you can set the exact date and time. If you've got a administrative user, for example, some building manager, you would usually want them to have an access exception. This access exception will give them the option to enter at any time, even if they don't have a valid time profile or if there's any other issue with this. So, for example, their I don't know, switch code is invalid because it doesn't belong to any time profile, etc. Then another section here is called user codes. User codes are split into these sections. So we've got the PIN code. The PIN code identifies a user to authenticate via a door. I will also show you that later, what it means. And then you've got switch codes. Switch codes are logical controllers inside the intercom that allow you to trigger, for example, electrical outputs or relays, or send some HTTP commands, etc. Another section here is user cards. The user cards are simple IDs of cards that have been enrolled into the intercom. There are multiple ways you can get them here. I will show you now. So if I use a card, and I put it here on the reader, you should see it appear as a card ID here. If I take it, copy it, that's the easiest way. I can put it here as a card ID. And then once this has been added to a user that is valid and has access, another tab on the reader will be marked as valid, and I will be granted access. So you can see that here. That's one option. Another option, which is more commonly used for some administrative buildings or offices where you would have multiple users, or actually many users, you would use a USB card reader that you have connected to your PC. If the person comes to you, they can just put their card on the reader and it will be enrolled here directly. You don't need to copy it from the access log. Then you've got also virtual card ID, which can be used for third-party systems connected through VGANT or OSDP. This is especially useful for integration of our mobile key and fingerprints, which I don't have here connected, but if I had them, it would be visible here. The mobile key works with Bluetooth and mobile phones. It just requires our application to a mobile key, which you need to pair with the device, or again, with a USB reader, and then you will be able to access the device. There are multiple modes that you can use. I will show how to set them up in a second. Then at the end of the user page, there's car fleet management, which means license plates. So if you would have a camera capable of reading license plates, then you can also add them here. And then if that license plate has been detected, it will be granted access depending on the time profiles and all of this again. And the last thing here is lift control. Right now, I don't have any lift controller connected, but if I had, I would see all of the available floors for this user. The lift controller, let me skip to that part, can be found here. You can connect them from here in the hardware section, lift control. And then if you want to set up floors, you've got up to 64 of them, and you can again control them via time profiles, as well as you can give them public access, which means you don't need any credential to tap the button and be able to access the floor. So this might be a gym or a reception or something like that. So let me continue from here. In the hardware section, as I mentioned, the switches. This will be very important for you if you want to control doors. So most of the time, if you get a new device, it will only have switch 1 enabled. But if you want others, then you can enable them. All of them, they look the same. And then you can use them to control different outputs. So as I mentioned, we've got relays and which are passive, as well as outputs which are active. You can also control which mode you want to use. If you want to use monostable, which means it triggers and then automatically disables the switch, or bistable, which means you trigger it once and then you have to deactivate it again. For the monostable switch, you've got a switch on duration, which is by default 5 seconds, but you can set it to anything you want. Right. Then we've got output type, which is controlling the state of the relay. There are actually 3 different types. The normal one means that if the switch is activated, the lock that is connected to it or door strike will be powered. If you use the inverted one, then it can be done in the opposite direction. So it means when there's a activation of the switch, it will deactivate the power supply, and therefore it will open the door if it's a inverted lock. And then the last one here is called security. Security is used with a security relay, which is a small additional module that you can connect to the output. So if I wanted to use that, I would need to do this. So output 1 and security. It doesn't work with the relays because it needs very fast pulses to trigger the relay correctly. It has to be paired. We've got a FAQ for it. So if you would like to see how to do that, you can go to a website called faq.2n.com. Oh, sorry, let's see that. It's got the old one, old domain. And then if you go here, you can find information and videos about how to do that. So if I'm looking for the relay, I will just look for security. And here you can see security relay. So here you can find how to set it up, how to pair it, and how to use it. Maybe I didn't mention this in the beginning, but if you want to get information about Turn products and product support, then we've got wiki.2n.com, where you can find all of our intercoms, access units, lift systems, telecommunications, IP audio, etc. So if you need any further detailed description of our devices, you can find that here. So let me skip back to the unit. So as I mentioned, the switch is a logical controller. So this is where you set it up, but the physical output that you are controlling is set up here. If you would have more outputs or relays, then they would appear here. But in this device, IP style, I've only got physically connected relay and output. So then moving on to the switch control, you can see what state the switch is currently in. For example, if I now trigger it, you will see that it changes to on. Therefore, you know that it's activated. If it were in bistable, it would stay on until I triggered this button again, or I used any other credential. You can also lock the device, which means no access will be available. And you can also hold the switch, which means the door will be open forever until you turn it off. As I mentioned, the activation codes, those are the switch codes that were available in the user section. These are global, so these are not linked to any user, but each user has their own, which they can use for each switch. By default, we don't enable 00 and 11 to be used from the physical keypad on the device or the touch keypad on the device. These can be only used via the TMF, meaning from calls. If you have any kind of conflict in the directory or any of those switch codes, you will see them marked here that there's a collision with a specific user. This one is the first user that I was configuring. You can see that they've got the same switch code as is the global one, which means it will not work properly and it will give you false information that it was activated by a user, even though it should be an activation code. Or general or global activation code. Right, so then moving on, down here you can see this checkbox called distinguish on and off codes. This is useful for situations when you want to separate the two. So you need to be in bistable mode, that's the first thing, and then this checkbox becomes available. And then what this means is that each of the odd ones is used for activation, and each of the even lines is used for the activation of the switch. So now if I wanted to activate the switch, I would use 00. If I wanted to deactivate it, I would use 1, 2, 3, 4, for example. And you can have up to 10 of those switch codes. You can see that they appear dynamically with each edit line. Okay, let me skip back to the beginning and change it to more stable, because that's the way I want to use it. Then down here, there are collapsed sections, which are used for other functions of the switch. First one is called extended activation, which means the switch can be triggered by any call. It can be incoming, outgoing, or both directions, or disabled. So if you have a scenario where this would be usable or useful for you, for example, you want to trigger some light or something when a call is made. This will appear as an option, but you can also use our automation, which I'll show you a bit later. Then there's synchronization. Switches can be synchronized. So if I've got a switch 1, switch 2, I can synchronize the two together. And therefore, you can imagine let's say a hallway where you've got the main door and then you've got some internal door that is like 10 meters behind it. And you always want to activate both of them, but obviously not at the same time because the person has to walk there. So you will have the switch 1, which is activated for 5 seconds. And then you can synchronize it with switch 2. And switch 2 will then be delayed by 10 seconds. You just have to do it, this way. If I enable the switch, then you can do it like this. So you will synchronize it after, let's say, 15 seconds. If you do this, then when switch 1 is activated, it will run its course, it will deactivate, and then after 15 seconds, the switch 2 will activate. So this is how you can use it, and as I mentioned, the example would be some kind of hallway or something like that. And the last option here for switches is switch on and switch off commands, which can be sent upon each activation or deactivation of the switch. And this can be used for example, again, if you want to do something like triggering a light or, I don't know, opening blinds, closing blinds, things like that. If you would have a username and password, you can use those. And then, as I mentioned, each device will have different amount of switches, but the most common one is 4. At the end of this section, there's also a advanced section which contains just this single switch checkbox. Sorry, it's called legacy switch code, and what it helps you to do is that if you have some kind of older system where it's impossible to confirm each DTMF or code with an asterisk, you can check this, and then the first code here for switch 1 will be possible to be entered as just 00 with no confirmation, and the intercom will accept it. Without this checkbox being checked, you will always need to use asterisk. So moving on from the switches to the door section, which is very important if you want to control doors, if you want to use some door open sensor, REX button, and so on, and also dividing the rules for entry and exit, you can do that from here. So beginning in the door section, at the first item here, that's the assigned switch. So right now, if I want to activate any door, it will activate switch 1 because that's the assigned door switch. And this means when there's a valid credential being presented to the intercom, it will activate this switch. If you would have some other switches that you would like to use, then you need to do that using automation, or there's an option to use this extender section. The extender section allows you to specify which switch you want to trigger with a specific module. Just so you know, this section shows you all of the connected modules to a device. So if it's a modular device, such as to an IP Verso or access units, it will show you multiple connected modules. In this example of to an IP style, you only see the RFID reader and you see the Bluetooth module. These are available internally, but can be set the same way. So now if I would like to control each of the associated switches, I would either use switch 1, switch 2, switch 3, whatever. Or if I want to use it for the door lock switch that is selected here, I would leave it as it was. Same for the Bluetooth module. You can select the direction, door entry, door exit, and again, the switch I want to use. All right, then moving on to the door open sensor, as I mentioned, You can assign it to any of the inputs that are available on the device. Some devices don't have any inputs, so you need to connect an external module. Then each of the inputs can be inverted or non-inverted, which is the same thing as for the switches, meaning it will either be activated all the time or deactivated. It's the polarity. And then using the door open sensor, you can detect if a door was unauthorized or open like forcibly, so someone kicked it out or something like that. Or if the door was open too long, so you can set a period of time after which you want to send an event to a third-party system, as well as being notified in the event log here. And then the last section here is the REX button. It's a request for exit. If you want to use that, again, you can choose any of the inputs that are available on the device, set it to inverted or non-inverted, and then if you press this button, it will open the door. This is most of the time used on the other side of the door, so from the inside, you don't need authentication. You can just use this button. If you need authentication, then you should use two readers, and they can be either connected to one device. So, for example, to a IP verso or IP style in this example, or also, access units, which all support external modules that look the same as IP verso or access unit, and they can be used on the other side and will allow you to authenticate each user on entry as well as exit. Moving on to the entry rules and exit rules sections, there are multiple ways you can set this up, but the easiest one is if you don't want to use any time profiles, you will just use this fourth one, which gives you the options to select, such as access disabled, code, card, Bluetooth, etc., and then their combinations. If you will select, let's say, just card, then it will not be possible to enter with anything but a card. But you can have these credentials added to the device. If you've got multiple devices and you want to use different access methods on each, then you can do that. If you will use any of these lines with the time profile, then you always need to specify the time profile, otherwise they don't work. What is also interesting here is, for example, for receptions or places where you would like to set up a silent alarm, this is possible. As I mentioned in the switch code, you can see that here. It shows you conflicts. So if there is any conflict, you need to get rid of that for it to work properly. And then in this example, I have code. It's set 1, 2, 3, 4. If I enter on 1, 2, 3, 4, it will open the door. But if I use the combination of silent alarm as well as that number, then if I will enter, and you can see it here in the hint, if I would enter 1, 2, 3, and 5, then it will open the door as well. So it will look like nothing strange is happening, but it will also trigger a silent alarm. This silent alarm can then be an email, it can be a relay or something like that that you can configure in automation. You can also limit failed access attempts. So if there's been 5 invalid attempts, then it will stop working and it will not be possible to access until the timeout has expired. And then the last thing that you need to enable, but by default it's disabled, is license plate recognition. So if you want to use that, this is where you enable it. Very useful info is service card. It's a simple solution to create users, but it might be a bit confusing then when you look at the users because they don't have any names. But if you really just need to create a user that will be valid, and then you might want to remove them, this is what you would use. You would have a plus card ID and minus card ID, which is one, let's say, administrative card, and it can be the same one or a different one. Oh, sorry, it can be 2 different ones, but you first have to introduce it to the reader, and then you introduce another card that is not in the system, and it will be created as a new user. And similarly, with the minus card ID, if you introduce this card first and then another card that is part of the system is a user, it will be removed. For IP style, there's also an option to enable QR code reading, which is not possible in any other intercom at the moment. So 2N IP style is the only one that supports this. And you've got also anti-passback. So again, imagine the situation if you've got a hallway and you've got a tourniquet where people are coming in and they would pass the cards between them. If you want to limit that, you can do that using anti-passback. So you can set it to off, soft, or hard. Which what it means is that soft one will only give you a notification that there's been an anti-passback event triggered, and if you set it to hard, it will not be possible to enter using the same card until they leave. This can only be used in combination with both directions, or if you've got Access Commander, which is our bulk management system, then you can use that for also the direction, and it can be used for multiple readers or multiple intercoms. The exit rules, they are the same. They are only lacking the QR code control because it's not possible to connect a QR code reader on the as an external one or on the other side of the door. So it's always available only for the entry. So moving on to the services section, I mentioned already that we've got automation. Automation can be used to trigger multiple actions. These multiple actions you can see in here. There are also events that trigger these actions, and there are conditions that you can use. I will show this to you at the end, but it's a very simple system. Let's imagine like you press any key and you would like to, let's say, activate a switch. You just connect the two like this, and that's it. Nothing else is necessary. If the switch is enabled and you press any key on the device, it will activate the switch. That's how it works. If you need some kind of condition, you can choose any of these. There are many of them. For example, it can only work in a call, for example. So if it's if the device is connected to an outgoing destination or any, it will only work at that situation. You can also invert them and so on. If I'll have time at the end, I will show you more. So let's leave this section for now. One thing that's very important with our devices, and that's the configuration. How we can work with the configuration is simple. If you've got a device that has already been configured to your liking and you would like to just transfer it to another device, or you just want to back it up, there's a backup configuration button. It will save all of the information into an XML file, and then you can restore it. You can see that you can choose what you want to restore from the configuration file, and then it will change the configuration. Right now, I have already created my configuration, so if I want, I will just save it. I will select where to save it, and that's it. You can also name the device, obviously, upon saving, so you can mark it as a proper configuration or that it works for this situation. You can create, let's say, presets that you can use, but most of the time, each installation will be different. So this might be only useful for the general settings if you use some similar ones, but the rest will really be have to be configured by you again. Talking about the configuration can also be synchronized to multiple devices using Access Commander, as I mentioned, which is a bulk management system for our 2N devices. Also, regarding the configuration, this is one thing that I want to show you, but I had to get to it first. So there are multiple options how you can reset a device. So for example, imagine that you forgot the password and you cannot access the web interface such as this. So if right now I would not know the password, I would be getting this message and I would be lost. If I don't know it 3 times or I enter it incorrectly, it will lock me out for a period of time, and then I will not be able to do anything with the device. And obviously, if you've got a configuration backup, it will be easy for you to restore the device. So if you've got access to the device and you just want to reset it to defaults, you will just click this button, reset configuration. You can also choose whether to reset network settings, so your IP address, etc., or not. And if you just click here, yes, it will reset to defaults. You will need to enter the password again, and then you will be with a clear device. If you don't have access to the device, so as I mentioned, you can't access it, you will need to do something else. That is hardware factory reset. The hardware factory reset is available for all of our devices, obviously, because you need to get to them. This is a general procedure that you can use with our devices. You just play the video. So as you can see, you just press the button, and then there will be a sequence of LED lights that you need to go through. There are also beeps in the latest firmwares, as you can see in the subtitles. So you can see that it goes red and green, then red. And then once the light turns off, you just let go of the button and the device will reboot and it will be cleared. So there will be no configuration, no password. It will just ask you for the default one, which, as I mentioned in the beginning, will be admin/2n. And that's how we do it. IP unit, which is our most basic unit, has a different procedure, and IP style also has a different one because it's built on a newer platform, which we call Intercom 2.0. So it's got a bit of a different procedure. The procedure is quite simple, though. You just disconnect the device from power, you hold the reset button, and then you just plug it in. You keep holding it, and then after a while, you just let go. The intercom will boot up, and again, it will be factory reset, so there will be nothing, and you just need to enter again the admin password and admin username and 2NS password. So that's how you would do factory reset. Then in the beginning, as I mentioned, use the network scanner to locate the device. All right, so now let's move on to how to set up calls, because this is what I showed you in the beginning. And now, since we've already got both devices available, we can do that. This is a function that is currently unavailable here in the intercoms, but it's already available in answering units. This function is coming in the next firmware, so stay tuned. But there is a similar, like to the network scanner that I showed you. It's also built into our answering units, and as I mentioned, it will be part of the intercoms as well. There is a simple network scanner that shows you all of the IP addresses. It's also got a filter, and if the device is already added, it will not be possible to add because it's already been listed. But if I didn't have it here, you just remove it. I can then quickly add the device. The device will open, and I can change its name. So if I want it to be something like main door, I can do that from here. I can select its icon. You can also change its device type if you're setting it up manually. And then you've got the phone number. And this is the important part. With 2N devices, all of them are detected and are identified on the network using their device ID. If this is enabled, enable local calls in both devices, they will be able to see each other. And so you can see that my indoor view has device ID, which is IDV. The IP style has a 2N IP style dash and its serial number, which is the default one. And then if I'm looking for the device in the scanner, I will find it like this. And the nice thing about this is that you don't need the IP address at all. Those devices, they will talk to each other using multicast. So if your network has got working multicast, they will be able to locate each other, and you don't need to specify the IP address. So if your devices are on DHCP and for some reason they would change the IP address, they would still be able to call each other if they are still on the same network or they are visible on the same network, and they will be able to reach each other. And so as I mentioned, in here, in the local calls, you've got the scanner, so you can see which devices are detected from the IP style. I can see the device indoor view. I can see its IP address. I can see its URI. But please be aware that this one is already specifying the IP address. So this is what it's going to use now. So if you were to copy it from here, it will always use this IP address. But if you were to do, let's say, use this user. If you were to do this, so you enter device, colon, and then you enter the device name, which can be taken either from the scanner or can be taken also from this section, then you'll be able to reach the device, as I mentioned, without using any IP address. Another option to call our devices is just by using their IP address. So right now, my IP address of the indoor view is 10.0.10.0.126. And now if I want to call it, I can do that. I can also group call it. So let's imagine this was another device. So this would call one device that's detected by its device name. And this could be, let's say, an IP phone. If the IP phone would support device direct SIP calls, then you would be able to reach them using this SIP number, SIP IP address. And you can also specify, you can see that in the hint, you can specify which SIP account to use if it were a extension. So let's say I've got an extension number on my PBX that's 100. This number would be assigned to a different device. And then you can also specify which SIP account to use. So if I were to enter /2, what it would do is it would use a second SIP account. And I will show you where you can find that right now. So if you go to the services section, you might have seen that a few times. I've already been here. You've got this SIP account 1 and you've got SIP account 2. By default, those are filled in with some default settings. They are not registered anywhere because our devices, they don't need any SIP proxy to call. As I mentioned, they can work in a SIP direct scenario or locally using their device name, so they don't need it. But imagine you've got a PBX where you've got multiple IP phones that are across your company, and you would like to reach them using our devices. So the option would be to register the intercom or answering unit to a SIP account. So you would need some kind of phone number ID. The domain would most likely be the IP address or domain name of the PBX. Same for the proxy address and registrar. Most of the time, these are the same, but sometimes they are different, so you need to fill them properly. Then you've got the authentication ID, which might be different from the phone number ID as well, and obviously a password to authenticate the device. Once this is done, you can then see the status here. It would be shown as registered, and then you can use the proxy to call. And if I open this user again, right now I set it up to use /2. So if this was some kind of PBX or domain of the PBX, and this was the extension number of the IP phone, or even our intercom, it doesn't matter. If it would be registered as the way I showed you, it would be like this. And then it would be using the SIP account number 2. If this is not specified, it will use the domain name, which might be connected to either of those SIP accounts. So either here or here, and then you would hopefully reach the destination if it exists. Okay, the last one, there's also an option to just enter some number like this, and it will do the same thing as I mentioned. It will just use the domain name of either of those SIP accounts. So if it is unreachable on the first one, it will then skip to the other one or the second one. If you specify it like this, then it will always use SIP account 1. If you use it like this, it will always use SIP account 2. Okay, so this is how you make calls. Let me just quickly call from this device. So there's an option to do a test call from our devices. It's available here. So I can call anyone using their SIP number or device number for the devices that are put into the device as a device name, or I can just tap the device on the device. I can just tap the user from here. If I know where they are, I can see them here. Hopefully you can see it on the camera. So you should be able to now see the user. I have the user in here in this folder. If I call, you will see directly the video stream, and you can then answer and unlock the door, obviously. So let me share my screen again. All right, then it would probably be useful for you to know how to control calls. There's many settings that you can use, but the most important one is if you want to receive calls on the device. So all intercoms by default, they are set to always busy, so you cannot reach them. But if you would like to do that, for example, in the local mode, you can set it up to be automatic, manual, or always busy. If you set it to the manual one, then you always have to confirm on the display of the device or with a button on the device. If you set it to automatic, if it's set to 0, it will pick up right away once there's an incoming call. If you would set it to, let's say, 10 seconds, then it would ring for 10 seconds and then it would pick up automatically as well. So these are the options that you've got here, and they are separated into these 3 sections. So you've got for the SIP account 1, SIP account 2, and then for the local devices. So if I would be called by a device that is identified using this device syntax, then it would be valid for that one. You might also want to limit the time of, the duration of each call. This can be done from here. So if you want to limit it to something, let's say 2 minutes, which is the default value, you can do that from here. Every time you're approaching the time limit that is set here, you will get a beep 10 seconds before the call will end. So just to notify you. And similarly, for outgoing calls, you can also specify how long you want to ring a specific destination. So if it's unreachable or someone is not picking up, it will ring for 32 seconds. This is the default value. If you want to cycle through the users, then you can use this dial cycles limit and it will go through the whole sequence 3 times. So depending on whether you've got parallel calls using this group call, and then you've got some deputy, or if you don't, but you would still want to call them, you can also have them like in sequence. So it will call the first number, then after those 32 seconds, or if they hang up on you before that, it will call the second number and then the third one, and so on. So skipping back to the call section, most of the time you might need to, especially with PBXs, you might need to set up the audio codecs. So this is where you can do it. You can select which codec will have which priority and if it's enabled or disabled. And similarly, for DTMF sending or receiving, you can select if you want a specific DTMF type to be used or not. With video calls, most intercoms, they support H.264. Other intercoms can also support H.263 and H.263 Plus. So these are the options that you can have here. And depending on the intercom, you will then have the option to select the resolution that you want to use, and also the video frame rate that you would like to have in the video, and the bit rate. These are the default settings. So for the IP style, it's full HD with 15 FPS and 2 megabits of bitrate. Other devices, they might have lower or higher resolution depending on the device type. Then what might be interesting is obviously the camera view, which can be found here in the hardware and camera settings. By default, the camera will be set to some values. For example, to an IP Verso, we'll have everything in the middle, so it will have like 6. Some of the values will not be available for each device depending on its configuration, but IP style has the most settings that are available. Right now, if I show you the preview, you can see me here. You'll see that it's set to some settings that in here I would say look good, but if you would, for example, like to bump the brightness or change the frequency of the for the flicker, you can do that here. So if the device is being used indoors, most of the time we would use indoor or 50 or 60 hertz. If it's being used outdoors, I would mostly keep it in automatic. But if you know that all of the lights in the scene will always be like 50 hertz or 60 hertz, you can specify it here. But the device is able to detect the frequency. But if there's mixed lighting, then you might have issues with that because it will prefer one of them and the others might start flickering. For example, this is what I think you can see even on the camera that which I'm showing you the devices with. It's flickering a bit because there's 50 hertz and 60 hertz being mixed together, so it's flickering a bit. Then also, depending on where the device is installed, the day and night mode can be selected here. Honestly, I would keep it in automatic, but if for some reason you know there's never going to be any light, you can set it to always night and it will then switch to black and white, and it will also turn on the LED if it's enabled here. Sorry, IR LED. It's also possible to specify the white balance of the device. And you can also enable WDR. WDR, I would only use it in extreme lighting situations with, imagine like a hallway where you've got a light at the end. And if you want to see outside, that's where I would use it. But otherwise, for example, IP style has such a wide dynamic range that it will see most of the scene, no problem. Even against direct sunlight, it will not be an issue. And you should see everything in the shadows as well as in the lights. But if you want to fine tune the settings, you can do that. There's a exposure time limit, so you can set how fast the device will capture the image. But obviously, that comes with a trade-off. If you set it to be 1/2000 of a second, you will get lots of noise. But if you set it to be like 1/5, if someone comes in very fast in front of the camera, they might get blurry depending on the lighting conditions. So be aware of that. I recommend leaving this setting at the default. Okay, for the camera, there's also another thing that you can enable, that's motion detection. So if you would like to use motion detection, you can enable it here. If I enable it right now, you will see there's a motion graph. Since there's nothing moving in this rectangle, it's fine. Nothing is detected. But if I were to put my hand in front of the camera, there's a little bit of delay. And also there are some filters, but if I move it quite a bit, you should see, oh, sorry, I didn't save it. You should see a red light in here very fast, hopefully. Let me try again. Okay, maybe not. Sorry. I don't know what happened here, but maybe some of the settings are wrong. You see, if there's a big change, now it works. So they're a bit too aggressive, the settings right now. So if it's red, it means the motion detection has been activated. If it's green, that means deactivated. So let me turn that off. So I don't want to use it. And then There's also an option to set up a privacy masking. So this is useful in GDPR use. So if, for example, you know that this part on the right where I've got the TV would be some neighbor that doesn't want to be on the camera, or you don't want to have them on the camera, you can get rid of them using either of these settings. So you can set it to black, white, red, gray, or mosaic. The mosaic can also be specified how harsh it's going to be. By default, it's set to 3. I would say that it's enough to not recognize who's there, but if you really want to push it, you can set it to be 6, and then you will get just a few squares, and that's it. All right, and then there's also an option, and this is available for most of our intercoms, even those that don't have a camera, if they support video but don't have a camera for some reason. For example, you might have installations where the camera is not wanted, but you would still like to use some external camera, but not this internal one. You can connect it. It's a simple RTSP viewer, which you can use also for the intercom. And this I'm going to show you. I'm going to do a little bit of a strange thing, but I'm going to stream the video from IP style to the IP style. So right now it's set to some high values, but let's put it like this, for example. You should be able to get the video if I enable it. Oh yeah. Now let's just use this one. If it's yeah. If you want to use the camera without any credentials, you need to turn on the anonymous access. But now I should be getting the video. This is okay. I don't know what happened. Oh, sorry, I kicked my POE. Just give me a second. I need to get into the unit. Yeah, sorry about that. You can see that my IP address has changed because I turned off the switch. So hopefully you are still connected as well as me. So this is actually one thing that I wanted to show you. This is the certificate warning that you will get if you're opening a new device. So let me just connect to the device. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. So that's how you get the external camera feed from another device. So this is what you can do here. If I wanted to get the video into a third-party system, or for example VLC, sorry, there's some update. Can also view the camera stream from the intercom like this. Sorry, getting audio loop. So this is how we can do it. It's quite easy. So if you have any kind of VMS or anything like that, or NVR, it will work. Very simple with this video. You can also use different settings. Right now I have it set to very low, but you can change it to be a higher resolution. With NVRs and most VMS systems, it's actually important to use OnWave. So OnWave, it will specify a user level. So you have user, operator, or administrator, and you've got a name and a password. that you need to specify most of the time, then it will connect to the NVR and it will be recording with its preset settings. Most of the time, the NVR will specify what kind of video it wants. So it's not being specified here, but sometimes they don't. So you actually have to configure the H.264 in here. So you set your preferred resolution, frame rate, and video bitrate. Okay, where was I? Yeah, okay, so we went through the streaming. Yeah, automation is for the end. So let's just skip here. This will be important for any kind of display equipped device. So in this example, I'm using IP style, as I mentioned. So you should be able to see it on the camera. Right now, it's set to show you a slideshow in the showcase mode. On other devices, it might also be called idle mode or something like that, but this is what it's called here. So it's called showcase mode. And right now in this firmware, I've got 3. So the first one is called slideshow. Second one is logo. And the third one is address. The slideshow is what you can see on the camera now. So if I'll stop sharing it, you should see my camera. So you can see that there's images running through. I don't know how many of them I've got there. So yeah, there's 5 of them plus the default one. I can disable them as I want, and I can also change their order. So if I want, I can like do this drag and drop, and then they will be shown in a different order. You can also select the transition time, so how long they will stay on the display. Another mode that is available is logo. The logo, if there would be any, it would be showing you your, let's say, your company logo if you upload it here. It can also be overlaid over a background image. So if you would have a background image, which I don't right now, but if I did, it would show me the logo over it if the logo would be transparent. If the logo would be a full screen image, then it would cover the whole screen. And the last one is called address. You can see that right now there's no address filled in. So here you're getting a preview of what's on the display. But let's say I want to fill in something. So I want to have their large 2N, but let's say something. You can enter it here. If you don't like the order, you can also swap it like this. So you can have a larger number below and a smaller address or street address in here like this. Also incoming in the next firmware is another mode which will show you the date and time and also weather. So if you would have, for example, the device inside and you would not know what to put on the display, this is one option that you can use. But also it's possible to select what you want to see on the display. So let me share my screen again. Okay, so these are the modes that are currently available. All right, then there's also an option that you can change. Yeah, you should be able to see it on the camera, but there are 2 modes that you can use for the display. There's card mode, which gives you these larger cards, and then there's phone book mode, which gives you just like lines, which they have the same function, but you can see more of them. And in the future, probably we will include some other layouts, but this is currently what is available. If you want to set a different delay after which the slideshow or any of the other showcase modes will activate, it can be done from here. Depending on what kind of Bluetooth authentication mode you want to use, you can select it here. By default, we've got touch, which means it will show you a button at the bottom of the screen. If there is a Bluetooth device available in the range, currently there is none paired, but I will quickly pair my phone and you will see the button. So let's just give me a second. I'll override this user's Bluetooth credential. This is I'm gonna use the app that I mentioned called Mobile Key. I've got the pin code here, so let me just open my phone. Okay, so now my phone is paired. It's very simple. You just enter the pin, that's it. And now I can see the button already on the display. So let me share my screen. You can see that now here's a button. If I tap this button, it will open the door if the phone is moving towards the intercom and is allowed to. So you can see the door has been opened. I can switch the position of the button so that it can be on the left or on the right. And also in the next firmware, there's an option to have a larger button in this showcase mode. So it covers the lower portion of the screen. So going back to the configuration of the device, you should also sometimes change the setting because obviously not everyone speaks English, not everyone speaks Czech. So we've got some preset audio messages that you can select from here, but they are also in different languages. So as you can see, this is the selection that we have. So right now I've got this English one. If I'll set the sound, sorry, yeah, this one, the door is open. What it will do if the switch one is activated, which right now it's set to be activated because you can see it here, door lock switch, and in the extenders I've got the associated switch to the Bluetooth as well for the door. So right now, if I'll press the button again or trigger the switch in any other way, oh sorry, I need to move the phone as I mentioned. Oh, it says that the door was open, and as I said, you can select any of these 8 languages, or you can even upload your own or record your own messages that you can use then. And this is also possible to use with automation that I will try to show you in the end. Okay, then this identifier, this device name, is what you can see in the network scanner. So as I mentioned, the display name is this device name that you can see here at the top. So if I were to change it to something like, let's say this, let's save it and I refresh it, in a second it will appear here as a new identifier. So if I've got multiple devices that are of the same type, I can like differentiate them using this device name, as this is the easiest way. For the language of the interface, it's also possible to change it from here. So this is a permanent change, but if you quickly just want to switch to some other language, you can do it directly from here. And if you want to change the password, for example, after factory reset, you just set it to something that complies with the requirements, but you would like to change it to something else, you can do that from here. It just asks you for a new password and to confirm it. That's it. All right, so this is everything from the services section that's important right now. And yeah, also one thing that might be interesting is, and this is valid for the indoor view as well as for the IP style, you can select how much, or actually how much brighter the device will be in the day mode compared to the night mode. So right now I have it set to 25%, so that it's visible on the camera. But if I were to put it into some higher value, like if I do it like this, it will be much brighter, and if you'll see it on the camera, it might be quite white right now. So just turn it back down to 25, which looks good. And you've also got these idle or low power modes, which means if the device has been inactive for, let's say, a minute, the backlight will turn down from those 25% to 1/3 of that. And to wake it up from this power saving mode, you can do it either by touch or motion, or just touch, depending on the type of the device, obviously, because if it doesn't have a touch screen, then it will only work with motion. But most of the time, our display devices also have a touch screen. For example, in the interview, the settings are very similar, but they are part of the display here. So you can see that it's pretty much the same. We've got just a different timeout, but the rest is very similar. So yeah, I think I covered everything here. Oh, maybe actually there's one thing. For the hardware and the audio, you might also sometimes need to change the volume. Let's say you've got an installation where the intercom is installed at a car entrance, and obviously cars are very loud. And if you arrive like on your feet, it's fine. There should not be that much noise. But in situations where you arrive in your car and you talk to the intercom, it might be too soft. So if you want to push it a bit, there's an option to enable this adaptive mode, or you can just use this global master volume, but it will turn it up all the way for each situation. But this adaptive volume will do it only when the current noise level crosses the threshold that is set here. So right now it's set to -24, and the current noise level is -30. So it's not going to be affected at all. But if I turn it, let's say, to -32, it should be giving me like 1 or 2 decibel. You can see that right now. So this is pushing the volume a bit higher. If I want to, in this situation, if I really want to push it, you can see that right now I'm getting +9 decibel, which is quite a bit more than the normal setting. But for car entrances, you might need different settings. So you need to probably measure it if there's a car and you cannot hear the person talking from the intercom. Just change it to something that corresponds with the threshold. If you want to change individual settings of the audio, you can do that from here. And if you want to change the user sounds, that's done from here, as I shown you before. Okay, and now moving on to the last section, which is called system. As I mentioned in the network scanner in the beginning, you can change the settings from there. If you're already in the device, you can do it from here as well. And plus, there's additional setting that you can change here, and that's the primary and secondary DNS. If you would like to, for example, ping something from the device, you can do that from here. So it's similar to what you've got in your operating system. So if I want to ping, let's say, Google, if it's accessible right now, I should be able to get a response. So if I want to ping another device in the network, I can do it as well. For troubleshooting purposes, there's this local and remote packet capture that you can download. This one is running all the time. So if something happened to the device and you want to see it, you can just download it. And for example, if you're troubleshooting calls why they are not working and you understand the SIP protocol, you can download the trace file. You can then open it in, for example, Wireshark, and you can read through it and maybe figure out why it's not working. Maybe there's no authentication or something like that. And if you want to capture a longer packet capture, then I would use this remote one, which is streaming to your web browser, and it can be basically unlimited in size. It's just limited by the period that you set here. So by default, it's set to 1 hour, but it can be also configured differently. Okay. Other troubleshooting stuff that might be useful is the syslog. The syslog, it can be sent to a server. So if you've got, again, Wireshark or some kind of syslog watcher or something like that, you can specify its server address here. You can set the severity level to error debug level 3, this one. This will give you all of the information that the device can provide, and then you will receive those messages. So if you're facing some situation that you cannot really replicate quickly, but it happens after some time, you might use the syslog from here. Or you can use also the local one. This is especially useful for our LTE intercom. So if you want to do something on it and, for example, it's disconnecting from the network for some reason, you can enable this local syslog, start it, let it run for 7 days. It can then be restarted again if you need to. And then you download the file, and it's a text file in which you can read or you can send to us. It's very useful because it contains all of the info again. And also it stays there after reboot. This is one difference between the local syslog messages and the network trace that is available from here. This local one, it always deletes after you download it or after each reboot. All right, and then the last troubleshooting step obviously should be to provide us with backup of the configuration so that we can try to replicate issues on our side as well. So if you've got this configuration backup file, if we've got a syslog file showing the issue, and probably a network trace if it's something network related, then we might be able to figure it out very easily for you. And now moving on to date and time, this might be very useful for integration with third-party services and devices. If you've got some, let's say NVR, and it's providing you time, it will give you the time here. But sometimes you might not be connected to the internet. The device might not be able to obtain it from an NTP, and therefore you might be getting incorrect time. Most of the times, the easiest solution would be just to hit synchronize with browser. It will give you the correct time. But if the device is disconnected from the internet and your browser doesn't have internet either, and you've got incorrect time, then I wouldn't use this. And there will be an option to set the time manually. Depending on the connection or connectivity to the internet, you can also set automatic detection of the time zone, which, as you can see, for me is Europe Prague. So it's correct. The time itself is correct as well. But my NTP server is not working for some reason, so I should use a different one or verify if it's accessible from this network. Last thing is that our devices, they support licenses. Maybe I mentioned this in the beginning when I was here in the status section. You can see what are the available services or features of the device. But if you want to add a license key, you don't need to copy it. It will not work for you. So good luck. But if you want to add additional features to the device, you need to obtain a license key from us and or from your distributor, and then the device will receive additional features. By default, some devices already have all of the licenses. Some of the devices might have some just partial licenses enabled, but most of the time, if you get a new device, it will not have any licenses, so you need to obtain them from us. There's actually a few ways you can get the intercom to get a license. First one is obviously by manually entering the license key that will activate the features. Another option is to activate a trial license, which will give you a gold license, which contains all of these. And if you want to use our online system, that is also possible. If I click on check now, it updates the key for me. And if it's saved in our system, it will automatically fill it in here, and it will get all of the licenses as well that are available for this device. All right, so I think we covered everything from the setup of the device, of the IP style. Let me just quickly jump into the interview. As I mentioned, it's very, very similar to the IP style. So the dashboard is just missing a few sections because obviously it doesn't have the intercom features or all of them. It doesn't have a camera, so you cannot see it here. It's got no access log, but it's got event logs. You can still see the information here. You can locate the device. And as I mentioned, this button to search for registered devices or to end devices will be available in the next firmware for intercoms as well. And yeah, maybe one thing here, if I'm in the device, in the directory, here you can set a name of a switch that you want to use with this device, and you can also specify the unlock code. And if you're using the lift, you can also check here lift, and it will give you a different icon so that it's easier to recognize which one you're using. And depending on which device is calling you the most or you're using the most, you can also put it on top of the list of the device on the indoor view. And you can also specify an alternative name, which might be different for the display and different here inside the web interface. The phone section is pretty much the same for the indoor view as well. Unlocking, this is a bit different compared to the intercoms. They don't have any section like this because they most of the time don't unlock anything on a third party, but they get unlocked. So this is where you can specify a like a default code, which will be sent to any device that is calling the indoor view, but is not specified in the directory and doesn't have any of these unlock codes filled in. So if there's nothing, it will always send this unlock code if you trigger the switch. You can also automatically hang up after the door has been opened. You can also set a delay for that. One new feature of our answering units is that they can send HTTP commands. You've got different icons. You've got the URL, which will be sent upon the button press. You can actually see it if I'll show you here. You can see that there are two buttons on the side that you can use, and they will send HTTP commands to the destination that is specified in the device. And again, you might optionally use username and password for these. And if you want to name the button, you can do that as well. So this will be shown when the button is activated. Again, user sounds are available, so some of them can be changed. For example, the ringtone for incoming calls. And you can also specify a location for the weather. So if there's nothing entered, it will try to detect it automatically. Same as with the IP style, you could see that there was this automatic detection and it was detecting that I'm in this time zone. But with the weather, it can give you a more precise location. So if I'll get rid of this, you can see that it has changed to some other location depending on the IP address, and you can also see when was the last update. One new thing with the indoor view is that it supports external cameras right now, so you can view them in the devices as well. So I could add, for example, the IP style as an external camera, but I can always have it there as a normal device. But if I had some other, let's say, third-party camera that would be on the ceiling and you would like to see the hallway, you can add it here, and then you can watch it from the indoor view as well. As for the troubleshooting, it's the same. Date and time is the same, and the configuration from here is the same. So backing up the file from here, restoring it from here is possible, and the reset of the configuration is described in the video that I showed you here. And if you want to do it directly from the interface, you can do that from here. So I think that covers everything that I want to show you from inside the intercoms. Hopefully we made it in time. I had to go a bit faster than I wanted to, but hopefully this was useful for you. You saw how to set up calls, how to check if you've got the latest firmware on the website in the maintenance section. So you can upload the firmware file, or you can do it via online update. You saw how to save and restore configuration. You also saw where to change and set up time, how to set up calls between two NOS devices and also with other devices or SIP extensions. Setting up time profiles, as I've shown you, it's quite easy. You just define the time which will be like for the activation, and when the time profile is inactive, then the specific action that is linked to it will not work. For example, door opening will not work at different times depending on the time profile, or different switches might not work as well. I also showed you how to use the door control and in combination with switches. Configuration of the camera was also part of this webinar. Getting the video stream, I showed you that with the VLC as an example, but as I mentioned, you can send the video from the intercom basically to anywhere. So it can be, as I mentioned, the indoor view, it can be another intercom of ours, it can be a VMS or NVR. Module settings, those I've shown you as well. Those are available in the hardware extender section. So from there, you can change settings of the modules. You can define which switch each module will use. So if you've got a RFID reader, for example, Bluetooth, you can define that the Bluetooth will open switch 1, and the RFID reader will, for example, activate the switch 2, and therefore you can use those two for different actions. In the beginning and then at the end, I showed you where you can find event and access logs, and then also some troubleshooting steps that might give you some useful information, which you can provide to us in case you would need some help. And then I quickly showed you automation, but unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go through it really. So if there's anything you would like to ask, please use the Q&A section. And I saw that you were using it during the session already, so thank you for that. So if there are any further questions, please send them to us and we will answer them. So thank you.